Hi, I'm Chris from Teddy's Knives. Join me while we make a kitchen knife. The first stage is to design the blade, and what we'll do is we will be drawing the blade shape onto this piece of steel. Once we've drawn the blade onto the steel, we then need to cut it out. So for that process, we'll be using an angle grinder. Once we've roughly cut the blank out with the angle grinder, we move on to the 2x72 knife grinder. This gives us a chance to put the relevant curves on it, and there's also a few things that I always like to do before we go to heat treat. The heat treat's a really stressful process, so we need to make sure that we get rid of any burrs that have been left from cutting it out. We also need to make sure that we soften the 90-degree angles before they go into the quench, because they can form stress risers that mean you're more prone to cracking in the quench. That's quite an important step. So the next stage is heat treat. Heat treat is essential to making an effective knife. Essentially, there's two stages to it. The first stage is to harden the steel, which is achieved by reaching the critical temperature for the specific steel and then quenching it in oil that is suitable for the particular steel. Following that, we then need to temper the blade. Now what that does is brings the hardness down slightly from it being chippy and not being a robust steel. It will be very sharp, but it won't necessarily perform well in a kitchen environment. So while the blade's tempering, we need to get started with the handle. Now today we are making a simplistic handle, so if this is your first time making a knife, this is a really good way to start. So we've got two materials for the handle. We have a dowel, which has been split, and we have a handle of, in this case, this is African blackwood. It's very high quality hardwood. And we have a hole which has been drilled, which is 12.5 mil thick. Your dowel is 12 mil, which means that that will go in the hole. The first step of making the handle is to reduce the size of the dowels so that they will accommodate the tang within that hole. After we've done that, we glue them in place, and then we work on making the African blackwood the right size and shape for a handle. So what we do with that is we remove a fair bit of material off that, because that's obviously quite a chunky bit of wood, and then once we've got it nice and symmetrical and the desired shape, we can work on taking the corners off carefully and making sure that they're accurate and perfectly flat, because we're going for an octagonal handle shape. So following tempering, our blade's ready to grind. We use very coarse grits made from ceramic for this process, because the blade is hard and they need to do a lot of work to get it down to a nice thin wispy kitchen knife. Once the primary grinds have been put in with a really rough belt, we then move on to finer belts, and we work our way up to a point at which we can take over with hand sanding. So today we're going to be working on a forced mustard patina finish. And now it's on to the glue up, where we join the blade to the handle, and we use a two-part epoxy for that process. Next, we need to sharpen the blade. For that process, we'll be using a 2x72 grinder on a very low speed so that we don't put any heat into the blade. And we'll be using worn out belts so that we get a lovely mirror finished edge. Following the machine work, we'll be moving on to a leather strop, which allows us to get rid of the fine burr that would have accumulated. This gives us an exceptionally razor sharp edge. So that's all the steps of making the knife. And now, here it is. If you've liked what you've seen, why not come and make a knife with me? Check out my website. I've got an experience day that will suit everyone.